The small village of Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, became the unlikely stage for the final act of the American Civil War. Nestled in the rolling hills of Virginia, this quiet hamlet would soon be etched into the annals of history. The serene landscape belied the monumental events that were about to unfold, events that would shape the future of a nation torn apart by conflict. On April 9, 1865, after 4 years of brutal conflict, the nation stood on the brink of a new era. The relentless march of time had brought both Union and Confederate forces to this decisive moment. The air was thick with anticipation and the weight of countless sacrifices made by soldiers on both sides. The once mighty Confederate Army of Northern Virginia found itself surrounded, outnumbered, and out of options. Exhausted and depleted, the soldiers faced the grim reality of their situation. The hope that had once fueled their fight was now a distant memory, replaced by the stark truth of impending surrender. The once bustling village, now bearing the scars of war, would bear witness to a pivotal moment in American history. The buildings, marked by the ravages of conflict, stood as silent sentinels to the events that would soon transpire. The echoes of battle still lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the cost of war. The surrender at Appomattox was not just a military formality, it symbolized the end of the Confederacy's dream of independence. It was a moment of profound significance, marking the beginning of the end of a conflict that had divided a nation. The handshake between Union and Confederate soldiers was more than a gesture. It was a symbol of reconciliation and the hope for a united future. It represented the culmination of years of bloodshed and sacrifice, a turning point that would redefine the nation's future. The fields that had once been battlegrounds were now places of reflection and remembrance. The legacy of Appomattox endures, a testament to the resilience and determination of a nation striving to heal and rebuild. By the spring of 1865, the Confederacy was on its last legs. General Ulysses S. Grant's relentless campaign had severely weakened Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. Lee, a brilliant strategist but facing insurmountable odds, began a desperate retreat westward, hoping to escape Grant's grasp and join forces with Confederate troops in North Carolina. However, his army, exhausted and low on supplies, was relentlessly pursued by Grant's forces, who effectively cut off their escape route. On the morning of April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee, realizing the futility of further resistance, sent a message to General Ulysses S. Grant, requesting a meeting to discuss terms of surrender. The message was carried by a young soldier, who rode through the war-torn landscape to deliver it. The two generals, who had met only once before during the Mexican-American War, now found themselves on opposite sides of a conflict that had ravaged the nation for 4 long years. They agreed to meet at the home of Wilmer McLean in Appomattox Courthouse, a modest house that would soon become a symbol of reconciliation. Grant, dressed in a simple mud-stained uniform, arrived first. He had been traveling with his troops and bore the marks of the long campaign. Lee, impeccably dressed in full military attire, arrived shortly after. His uniform was pristine, a stark contrast to the weary soldiers he commanded. The two men, once brothers in arms, now adversaries in a war that had torn the nation apart, faced each other with a mixture of respect and sorrow. They exchanged brief pleasantries before getting down to the solemn business at hand. The terms of surrender were generous, allowing Confederate soldiers to return home with their personal possessions, horses and sidearms, marking the beginning of the end of the Civil War. Terms of surrender: Grant's generosity and Lee's acceptance. Grant, known for his tenacity on the battlefield, exhibited unexpected magnanimity in victory. He offered generous terms of surrender, allowing Confederate officers to keep their sidearms and permitting enlisted men to return home with their horses and mules. Lee, recognizing the inevitable, accepted Grant's terms. He formally surrendered his army, effectively ending the Civil War in Virginia. The surrender, while a somber affair, was marked by a sense of mutual respect between the two commanding generals. Aftermath: the end of a nation, the beginning of healing. The surrender at Appomattox had a profound impact on both the Union and the Confederacy. It was a moment that signaled the end of a brutal and divisive conflict that had torn the nation apart for 4 long years. For the Union, it represented the hard-won victory they had long sought. The soldiers and citizens alike felt a sense of triumph and relief, knowing that their sacrifices had not been in vain. For the Confederacy, it marked the end of their dream of an independent nation. The soldiers who had fought so valiantly now faced the harsh reality of defeat and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The news of Lee's surrender spread quickly, sparking celebrations in the North and a mixture of relief and despair in the South. Newspapers across the country captured the momentous occasion, with headlines that would be remembered for generations. While the nation rejoiced at the end of the bloodshed, the process of healing the wounds of war was just beginning. Communities had to rebuild, families had to mourn their lost loved ones, and the country had to find a way to come together once more. The end of the Civil War was not just the end of a conflict, but the start of a long journey towards reconciliation and unity.